So I was looking up some statistics on the financial state of many Americans, and I found one website that had some interesting statistics. And I checked with a few other websites, and the numbers are pretty close for each of the websites. So what I found on these websites when I was doing this research is that 75% of Americans are in debt, and over 20% of Americans have trouble paying their bills. And then over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So it's not surprising that I think it's important to talk about financial freedom. For many of us, our finances really drive a lot of things in our lives, but a lot of times we don't really have our financial life under control. And that's becoming increasingly more of a struggle for a lot of people as prices go up, the high price of housing, transportation. And it's especially challenging when you're younger and you're going to college and you're trying to buy food and housing and all of those sorts of things. And then as you start your early years and buying a house and starting a family, and if you don't start off right, you can really get into a lot of trouble. So, believe it or not, Jesus actually talked about an important financial principle that I think we should consider when we look at our finances. So I want to take a quick look at what Jesus taught, and then we'll go into a little bit further about how we can apply this into our lives. So this is in Luke chapter 14, verses 28 through 30. For which of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost, if he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who are watching will begin to ridicule him, saying, "This person began to build and was not able to finish." So Jesus would often teach in parables, and I think this is another one of Jesus' parables. But we don't really realize that Jesus' parables have two sides. Obviously, there's a spiritual side that helps person grow deeper spiritually, but there's also a very practical side that we can apply into our lives as well. So this verse, Jesus is talking about the importance of counting the cost of following him. So that's kind of the deeper spiritual meaning. And he's really referring to many will stop following him because of the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, a lot of the things that go on in this world. So many will follow him. So he's saying it's important to count the cost. Is he worth enough to you that you would put him first and be willing to take whatever cost it is to follow him? Well, the other meaning, the other wisdom that I think we can get out of this, and that's what I'm really going to go into in this message, is how can we count the cost for our own financial lives? How can we be prepared and have a good plan, and how can we know that we're going to be able to cover our expenses and live with financial freedom? So Jesus is teaching here that we need to count our cost and make our decisions based on what we're able to spend. So how do we do that? How do we know that we're going to not spend too much? How do we know that we're going to be able to pay our bills and get out of the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and build up savings and work towards our goals? So the first thing you got to do is have a plan. So what is a plan for money? Well, it's a budget. And I know for many of you that might be a dirty word, but a budget it's basically a spending plan, and you look at all of your income and all of your expenses. So Jesus taught in this story that we need to look at our income and expenses and make sure that we can afford to do whatever it is we're going to do or live the way that we are going to live. So many of us don't know how much we're spending. We spend until we know we can't go over. Unfortunately, some people spend money they don't have yet with credit cards or other things, and yet they don't realize many of the other things that they're spending money on that maybe they shouldn't or can't afford to. So I'm sure a lot of that sounds like not much fun, and a lot of people don't want to talk about budgets or money because it sucks the whole fun out of life. But I'm going to argue to you a different perspective, that budgeting actually gives you financial freedom, and it will help you achieve your goals, and it will help you live a more financially well life. So I wanted to talk about some things that I learned with my own budgeting. And I've been budgeting for pretty much once I got out of college and started living on my own is when I started budgeting. And it has been a great blessing to me, and it has helped me get through a lot of different changes in my life. And my budget has changed several times, but overall it's been really helpful. And it's helped me meet some of my goals. It's helped me get a plan and some actions started towards meeting some of my future goals, like saving for my son's college, for replacing cars, for a lot of things that a lot of people end up buying beforehand and then paying interest. And so a budget will really help free you up in a lot of different ways. So the first thing that I did with my budget is I broke it up into weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. So this helps you break down all of those different expenses, because I have some bills that come in weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. So it kind of helps you put everything into the same language, the same terms. So you'll look at not only your expenses like that, but also your income. And then ultimately you can compare your income with your expenses. So it's really a pretty simple concept. So income always needs to be greater than your expenses. So you never want to spend more than you make, because that's where you end up digging yourself in a hole, and that's when life gets stressful and every little thing just seems like a big thing. And I'm hoping that through budgeting you can learn to have more financial freedom. So in my budget, I budget everything from spending money to vacations to home repairs, all of my monthly bills like internet, phone, everything like that, car insurance. So everything I have is in my budget. And ultimately, I'll have $0 at the end of my budget. So what that means is I'll have my income, I'll have everything that I'm saving in different categories, and then everything that I'm spending. So when I take my income minus my savings minus my expenses, it equals 0. So that's what I mean by that. So when we think about our money, we would rather spend our time planning a vacation, or even saving for a vacation, than planning a budget. But I want to show you by asking you a few questions just how a budget can give you freedom, and how it's not as restricting as you might think. So do you ever wonder where all of your money goes? So a budget helps you know where all of your money goes, because it's all written down. You can see where it is every month. You know what needs to go where. Do you ever feel stressed about money all the time? So I know finances is a big stressor for a lot of people. So a budget helps you know where all of your money goes, and you also helps you know where your money goes and how much you can spend. So when you know how much you can spend, it's less stressful. You just don't buy things that you can't afford at the time. And I know for some people that takes discipline and self-control, but it really pays dividends when you are trying to accomplish your financial goals, because you're not getting sidetracked on these things that aren't really that important. So another question, do you ever feel like you will never be able to get out of debt? So or that you'll never meet your financial goals. So when you create a budget, you'll see your unnecessary expenses, and you can see those areas that you can cut so that you can focus on paying down your debt and saving for your goals. So it can help you refocus on what really matters to you. So many of us want financial freedom, but we don't necessarily want to do the work to get there. And many of you may feel like writing and following a budget is like being in bondage. But there's so much benefit that can come from having a budget and by living within your means, living within your budget. And the reality is, no matter what we do, we're going to be servant to something. We're either going to be servant to the debt that we create to try and live the lifestyle we think we want, or we're going to be a servant to our own financial objectives and our own goals that we have financially. So really we decide in the moment, or we decide beforehand, and we create a plan and we follow that plan. So we all have a choice of what master we serve, and one servant results in more bondage, and then the other results in more freedom. So that's just what I want to leave you with. So I hope that you have enjoyed learning a little bit about budgeting, and I hope that you'll create a budget for yourself, and that it will help you get one step closer to financial freedom.